What if one random act of kindness forced you into a life you never asked for? What if the woman you saved was the most powerful and dangerous person you'd ever meet? And what if she remembered none of it? The blizzard roared like a hungry beast through the twisted evergreens of Raven Hollow Road, flinging daggers of ice across the empty blacktop. Jamal Rivers tightened his grip on the cracked steering wheel, knuckles ghost white under the faint dashboard glow. His battered F-150 wheezed out lukewarm air, doing a pitiful job of keeping the chill from crawling through the seams. In the back seat, his daughter Zoe, 6 years old and queen of snack crumb, snored softly under a faded unicorn blanket, her breath fogging the window beside her. She had her late mother's lashes long, dramatic, and wasted on sleep. Jamal's back ached from another 12-hour shift at the shop, rusted mufflers, cracked axles, and a customer who thought duct tape was a miracle cure. His coverall smelled like a used engine block, but none of that mattered now. He just wanted to get home before the roads iced over like a freezer shelf. The storm had turned savage fast, even by Wyoming standards. A warning crackled from the radio. Whiteout conditions, zero visibility, travel discouraged. He turned the volume down. Too late to turn back. The road ahead was a vanishing actonly. His tire tracks marked it before they were devoured by snow. His thoughts were already at home, heating up canned chili, maybe adding toast if he remembered to buy bread. Then bam, something blinked. Amber light, faint, flickering. Hazard lights. He squinted. A luxury car, black, massive, slumped like a stranded beast, half swallowed by the snowbank. A Range Rover. Rear tires buried, no engine sound, nothing moving inside. Jamal eased his truck to the side, heart doing a weird skip. No signs of life. Just a cracked open window, maybe 3 inches wide, either for air or a silent scream. He parked, slid the gear to park, and turned to pull Zoe's blanket tighter. She stirred but stayed asleep. Outside, the wind slapped him instantly, slicing through his sleeves and rattling his bones. The snow came sideways, sharp, blinding. He stomped through the drifts to the car and banged on the window. Nothing. He cupped his hands and peered in. A woman, slumped over the steering wheel. Blonde, pale, not moving. "Hey!" Jamal yelled, pounding harder. Still no response. He rushed back to the truck, grabbed the crowbar he kept for stubborn tire bolts, and sprinted back. He wedged it into the cracked window, jimmied the lock like second nature. The door clicked open, and she collapsed toward him. "Jesus," he muttered, catching her just in time. Her skin was icy, lips kissed with blue, breath nearly invisible. No questions, no hesitation. He cradled her against his chest and staggered back to the truck, snow biting his face the whole way. Inside, he shoved his coat around her, blasted the heater to max, even though it might as well be whispering warm lies. His heart thumped like a war drum as he looked from the road to the mystery woman, to Zoe. Still asleep, unaware, they now had a +1. Zoe blinked awake, one eye open. "Daddy? Who's that?" Jamal pressed his fingers to the woman's icy forehead, then her wrist. "Someone who needs saving," he said. He hit the gas. The storm swallowed them whole. They crept uphill, tires slipping. The woman, who he didn't know yet, was named Veronica Drake. A CEO who could buy a small country, was still out cold beside him, breathing shallowly under his grease-stained coat. The vents rattled like they were holding back an avalanche, but he angled them toward her face, praying warmth would drag her back to life. Every few seconds he checked, was she waking up? Or the other thing? Jamal had seen cold like this before. It didn't scream. It waited, quiet, patient, until you stopped noticing your fingers, or the beat of your heart. Behind him, Zoe sat up fully now, wide-eyed, silent. She knew something was wrong. Her dad's clenched jaw, the way he gripped the wheel like it owed him money, it was all the signs she recognized. Money short, car dead, trouble. Their house sat at the end of that road, but tonight, the night was just getting started. The gravel path was nearly invisible, swallowed by snow and flanked by a crooked row of lifeless trees that looked like they'd given up months ago. A weather-beaten, one-story cabin sat at the end, its roof rusting into retirement, porch light blinking like a bad alibi. Jamal eased the truck as close as he could, engine still running like it needed encouragement, then hurried around to lift the unconscious woman again. She stirred faintly this time, her cheek brushing his shoulder, a flicker of life that sent a spark of hope through his chest. Inside the cabin, the heat was nothing to brag about, but it was dry and not trying to kill them. He kicked the door shut and headed straight for the threadbare couch beside the old wood stove. The room was small, patched-up drywall, newspaper insulation still clinging in spots like forgotten wallpaper, the air thick with the scent of pine smoke, and old dreams brewed in black coffee. Jamal knelt, pulling off her wet designer boots and replacing them with thick wool socks from a nearby basket. Then he swaddled her legs in a quilt his grandma had sewn decades ago, edges unraveling, but still magic. He looked over his shoulder. "Zoe, sweet pea, can you grab the thermos from the table?" She nodded, bouncing across the creaky floor with a dented red container clutched in both hands. Jamal poured some into a chipped muget. Wasn't a miracle, just chamomile and honey, but it was hot and kind. He lifted the stranger's head gently and pressed the rim to her lips. A few sips passed enough to count. Then, a tremble. Her eyes blinked open, glassy, blue, wild. "You're okay," Jamal said calmly, voice low like it might scare her if it tried too hard. "You're safe." She blinked again, lips parting. "Where am I?" "Shadow Ridge," he answered. "You were out cold in your car. I couldn't leave you." She stared at him. No judgment. No walls, just sheer exhaustion etched into every line of her face. "I didn't think. I was just trying to get to Pinecrest Lodge," she murmured. "Phone died. GPS lost its mind. Then the engine—" "Shh," he said gently. "Don't waste your strength." Across the room, Zoe stood near the couch, a blanket trailing behind her like a cape. She eyed the stranger curled on their sofa like a rare animal had wandered in. "Is she gonna be okay?" she asked. Jamal nodded. "She just needs to get warm." Zoe stepped closer, extending her own blanket with pride. "This one's mine. It has stars. It's really warm." The woman, Veronica, though he didn't know that yet, gave the smallest of smiles. Her voice was threadbare but present. "Thank you, sweetheart." That tiny moment, it settled in the air like church silence. Two completely different worlds huddled under one flickering light, slowly defrosting. Jamal sat back, arms folded over his chest. He was still cold, still uncertain what fate had dumped into his truck. But when he saw Zoe sit beside the woman, without fear, just curiosity that did something to him, grounded him. They'd get through this night, together. By the time the stove glowed red, casting pulsing shadows on the walls like some slow-moving heartbeat, Veronica was sitting upright on the couch, color returning to her cheeks. Her hands clung to the tea mug like it might disappear. She wasn't shivering anymore, and Jamal could tell she was back. Not whole, but back. He sat across from her now, elbows on his knees, watching, listening. The storm outside had quieted, as if curious too. He didn't usually bring strangers in. Definitely not white women in cashmere coats who probably thought a socket wrench was a cocktail ingredient. But something in the way she'd looked behind that windshield, helpless, alone, had hit something primal. And the little girl in the back seat who peeked from the hallway curtain every couple minutes, she'd sealed it. He'd do it all over again. Veronica finally broke the quiet. "You didn't even ask who I was." Jamal didn't blink, just leaned back and rubbed the back of his neck. "Didn't matter." "You didn't hesitate either," she said, squinting like she was reading between his words. "You saw a stranger unconscious in the middle of a blizzard, and just acted." "You needed help," he said plainly, like it answered everything. And for him, it did. She studied him, his strong arms, the dirt under his nails, the hands that had wrapped her in blankets and tea instead of questions. His face wasn't old, but it carried weight like someone who'd held up the world too long and never got thanked for it. Behind the curtain, Zoe peeked out again. This time, she stepped forward, teddy bear in hand. "Is she a princess?" she asked, eyes wide. Jamal almost chuckled. Veronica did. "Not quite," she said, tucking her hair back. "But I work with cars too, in a way." "Like Daddy?" Zoe's eyes lit up. Veronica smiled, faltering for half a second before steadying. Maybe not exactly like him. Jamal stood and wandered into the kitchen. He ladled, soup canned, maybe from last month, into a chipped bowl, and returned to place it gently in front of her. It's not fancy, he muttered, but it'll warm you up. Veronica stared at it, but her eyes didn't leave him. The soup was thick, rich broth, soft potatoes, scraps of chicken that clung together like they had something to prove. Veronica took a bite and paused. Simple, honest, weirdly comforting. She looked up, really looking this time for the first time. Her eyes wandered over the patched walls, maps held in place by yellowing tape, receipts pinned like old battle medals. She spotted the second chariot's cushion guts peeking out. Then her eyes settled on the photo above the fireplace. Jamal, younger, grinning like he didn't know how rare that would become, holding a baby Zoe next to a woman whose smile was fierce and fatigued all at once. The kind of smile that could have told a whole story by itself. "You live here alone?" Veronica asked softly. Jamal's jaw flexed once. "Just me and Zoe now." She didn't push. Instead, she dipped her spoon again, the warmth slowly undoing the tightness in her chest. The soup was better than it had any right to be. Hours old, maybe. Crafted in a dented pot, but perfect. Jamal didn't say much, just watched her eat. Not judgmental, not cautious, just present. And she felt itin energy in the room, more solid than the walls. The storm still howled somewhere out there, but not here. Here, there was only fire crackle, the soft hum of a child, and something that felt like a peace neither of them trusted. By dawn, the blizzard had exhausted itself, leaving the world blanketed in thick silence, the kind of hush that only snow could pull off. Frost painted the windows like stained glass. The trees stood frozen in place, bearing witness to the night like old sentinels. The road was still hidden under inches of white, but the morning light whispered something bold and quiet. "You made it." Jamal was already out, breath clouding the air in short bursts as he crunched through knee-deep snow, battery charger on one shoulder, toolbox in hand. The Range Rover sat exactly where he'd left it, half buried, a frozen statue. He didn't sigh, just set to work. He wiped down the intake valves, tested the alternator, and swapped a spark plug from his own private stash. Didn't cut corners? Never did. It wasn't in his blood to half-fix something. If it could work again, he'd make sure it did. Inside, Veronica and Zoe sat tangled in blankets on the couch. Some animated creature chirped from the old television in the corner, just loud enough to keep Zoe giggling. Veronica wasn't laughing, though. Her eyes kept drifting to the window every few minutes, searching for the silhouette of the man who had pulled her from the storm and never once asked why she was out there in the first place. No questions, no labels, just decency. Her hands still ached from the cold, her thoughts steadier now, but something inside remained tangled. Not fear, something older, deeper, guilt, gratitude. When Jamal stepped back in, snow melting off his boots, she stood. He handed her the keys without fanfare. "Should be good now. Battery's up. She'll start." She wrapped her fingers around the keys, but didn't turn toward the door. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. Jamal raised an eyebrow. Didn't make sense to leave it broken. There it was again. No ego, no price tag, just plain truth. Veronica looked down, then up. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," he said, already moving toward the fireplace, coaxing the flames back to life before they gave out. But she didn't move. Not yet. She stood watching him, like if she stared long enough she might figure him out. A man who gave everything and expected nothing. Who lived simply, but carried something vast inside. How many winters like this had he braved alone? How many people had he helped without even blinking? Zoe suddenly ran up and wrapped her arms around Veronica's legs. "The High Princess," she declared, giggling. Veronica crouched and hugged her back, holding tight longer than necessary. "No," she whispered. "You're the brave one, sweetie. Thanks for sharing your stars." Outside, the cold waited, but it didn't feel as sharp. She climbed into the Range Rover. the engine humming under her hands like it had missed her. She paused, hands on the wheel, eyes on the mirror. Jamal stood in the doorway, arms crossed against the wind, watching, not expectant, just there. She rolled the window halfway down. I mean it, Jamal. I won't forget this. He nodded once. Drive safe. She lingered a beat longer, then eased forward, tires crunching softly beneath the snow. In the mirror, the little house shrank away, but the warmth in her chest stayed tethered to that porch, that man, and that kid with stars stitched into her soul. She didn't know it, yet not fully, but the road she was on had already changed. 2 weeks passed. The snow in Shadow Ridge began to melt, reluctantly loosening its grip. Rooftops wept. Tree branches shed ice like old coats. Water pooled into lazy rivers along the roads. Winter hadn't quit, but it had stopped yelling. And in the quiet, Jamal's world settled back into rhythm. The alarm still rang before the sun, and his hands still smelled like grease. Oil-stained coveralls, early light spilling across the floor, and Zoe's laughter echoing from the hallway as she crammed her tiny backpack with crayons and important questions. Life has a way of slipping magic into the everyday, like the extraordinary never happened. But sometimes, in the quiet, with a coffee cup cradled in both hands, or when the frost on the porch railing shimmered just right, Jamal would think of her. Veronica, the woman with frostbitten hands, hollow eyes, and a name he didn't even know until long after she was gone. He didn't expect anything to come of it. So when the envelope arrived, cream-colored, thick, no return address, assumed it was a mix-up. But the name written on the front, Jamal Rivers, looked like it belonged in a different life. Elegant, too careful to be from a bill collector. He opened it standing by the mailbox, late afternoon shadows stretching across the snow-speckled yard. Inside, a letter, handwritten, dark ink, crisp folds. He unfolded it slowly, as if afraid the paper might vanish. Dear Jamal, I don't know if I'll ever find the right words, but I need to try. That night changed something in me. You didn't know my name. You didn't ask what I did or what I could give. You just saw someone in trouble, and you acted with no questions, no pride. That kind of kindness, it doesn't exist much anymore. He swallowed. Something tightened in his chest. Not pain, something bigger. My name is Veronica Drake. I run Drake Motors. We have locations across the country. Lots of buildings. Bigger egos. But lately, I felt it all slipping away from what matters. That night, you reminded me what real decency looks like when no one's watching. You reminded me who I used to want to be. He turned the page thicker paper this time. Formal. A job offer. Lead technician plus supervisor. New regional training facility in Helena. Real salary. Full benefits. Flexible hours specifically. Tailored for single parents. Not a handout. An opportunity. And tucked behind it, a receipt. Mortgage. Paid in full. The household, patched, stitched, together with time and stubbornness, was now his. Completely. No more red notices slipped under the wiper. No more tightrope walking between groceries and rent. Jamal sat down on the porch steps, the letter shaking faintly in his fingers. The world tilted a little, not in panic, but in realization, the weight of being truly seen. Not as a man surviving by the inch, but as someone who had reached out and changed the arc of another person's story. The screen door creaked. Zoe burst out barefoot, curls wild, stuffed bear dangling by one arm. Daddy? She paused, her brow scrunching. You crying? He opened his arms. She dove into them like it was where she belonged. He held her close, kissed her forehead, voice rough but steady. Yeah, baby girl, I am. She pressed her cheek to his chest, whispering something only for him. I'm a weapon. He pulled back, blinking down at her. His eyes shimmered. No, sweetie, he said gently, voice low. You're magic, the real kind. And as the horizon burned gold and violet, the wind stilled. He held her on the edge of something new. Not just a job, Not just a paid-off house, but something harder to name. Dignity. Hope. A life they hadn't dared imagine in full color. Miles away, in a glass tower overlooking a skyline she used to worship, Veronica stood by her office window, in her coat pocket, a folded thank you note. Jamal's handwriting, rough but steady. You didn't owe me anything, but you gave me everything. Thank you. She ran her fingers across the creases, then tucked it deeper into her coat. Tomorrow, there'd be meetings. A new training facility to tour. But tonight, she'd go home thinking about a flickering fire, canned soup, and a little girl with stars stitched into her blanket. And the man who showed her what quiet integrity looked like when the world wasn't watching. They had met as strangers, but the storm hadn't just passed. It had built a bridge, and neither of them would ever be the same.